What's the deal with Skydance Animation? Wait, who? You may have seen promotional content of one of their two feature films, Luck, a 2022 Apple TV Plus exclusive, and Spellbound, a 2024 Netflix exclusive. And you're going to be hearing from them more. The company is scaling up its capabilities to deliver Puku in 2025, and after that 2 movies to streaming a year. Furthermore, their parent company Skydance Media is currently merging with media giant Paramount in an $8 billion deal, with Skydance CEO David Ellison leading the resulting company, Paramount Skydance Corporation. In animation, this would include Nickelodeon IPs including SpongeBob SquarePants, Rugrats, and TMNT. But despite this division's incredible financial presence and ambitious aspirations, its animation division has received little investigation on YouTube. The top YouTube results for Skydance Media are about the Paramount acquisition and its life as a financial, not an artistic entity. Results for Skydance Animation are either the company's own media or focused on its relation to one person, its head of animation, John Lasseter. This video is my attempt to start a conversation about Skydance Animation. It's easy to be cynical and write it off as a side project for the son of one of the world's richest people who picked up a famed but disgraced Pixar executive. However, there's much more complexity to Skydance Animation and much more significance for its productions beyond being a referendum on a few specific individuals. Skydance is set to continue to pave its path in animation production, regardless of whether people simply dismiss it. I believe that even if it doesn't succeed, it reflects industry forces that will push legacy Western animation studios to look a more lot like itself than the other way around. I will first summarize simple factual content of Skydance Animation, its founding and leadership through a brief history. Then I'll provide highlights from my research of a wide range of primary and secondary documents to infer the division's implicit values and strategy. Everything will include detailed citations in the captions for anybody else who wants to learn, write, or investigate more about Skydance Animation. Skydance Media was founded in 2010 by David Ellison, the son of Oracle CEO Larry Ellison, who has long been among the richest people in the world. There is some family interest in media. David Ellison's sister Megan Ellison is the founder of Annapurna Pictures, which has successfully produced major productions like Her, American Hustle, and Nimona. From now on, Ellison by itself is referring to David Ellison. Ellison's personal touch and interest is felt in the company. The name Skydance refers to his interest in aviation, and the first movie he produced through Skydance Productions was the 2006 Flyboys, a World War I fighter pilot film. As a college senior, he personally financed the film with over $60 million of family funds and acted in it as well. The first film from Skydance Media proper arrived in 2010 as part of an early partnership with Paramount Pictures, which has distributed most of their films. With direction from the Coen brothers, True Grit was nominated for 10 Oscars, a commercial and critical success. This became a common formula for Skydance, blockbuster productions with huge star power, involving recognizable, rebooted franchises if possible. Most people likely encounter Skydance from these films, the new Mission Impossible movies, the 2010s Star Treks, and Terminator Genisys. In 2017, Skydance Animation was launched. The expansion into animation was likely inevitable, again following Ellison's personal interest. Through his father's connection to Steve Jobs, he was able to view in-progress cuts of Pixar films like Toy Story, and professed his passion for animation upon launching the division. Skydance Animation was announced with an agreement with Spanish animation studio Ilion Entertainment, which was already working on Skydance's first 2 animated feature films. Ilion before Skydance had a long 5-year production cycle, releasing mostly forgotten movies, including for the Spanish domestic market. It would be acquired as a full subsidiary in 2020. Big streaming deals secured the distribution of its animated films. The company entered into a very favorable agreement with Apple in 2021 to make their upcoming films exclusive to the tech company's streaming platform focused on original content, Apple TV+. This did not prove long-lasting, and in 2023, the company switched to Netflix for its upcoming film Spellbound and all planned future films. The final essential piece of Skydance Animation, and the thing it's most notoriously known for, is its 2019 hiring of longtime Pixar leader John Lasseter to lead the division. This came 2 years after he resigned from Pixar and Disney following accusations that he personally created an unwelcome workplace, especially through unwanted physical contact with female employees. The hiring was controversial in both the industry and internally at the company, as Ellison worked to reassure uncertain employees who were disappointed by the decision. Let's continue beyond the surface level. Several important parts of Skydance Animation are not explicit, but have become apparent to me from learning about it. Skydance seems very much driven by the individual personality and interests of David Ellison. This contrasts the comparative de-emphasis of his sister Megan Ellison's name in relation to the production company she founded. David's name tends to always follow references to Skydance, particularly in the company's own materials. I generally avoid over-attributing the actions or outcomes of a large organization to one person, even a top executive. However, I think some aspects of Skydance's strategy and operations appear directly traceable to Ellison's influences. Ellison has a stated reverence for Steve Jobs. This wasn't just hanging up a poster of the guy in your dorm room, he had personal access to Jobs, whom he called his father's best friend, and received feedback from him for his vision for Skydance Media. From a 2022 podcast interview with Kara Swisher,
and, Steve was very kind. He said, fly up here tomorrow. And I pitched him the company. And he looked at me and said, I don't think this will work. And I asked him why. And he talked about Pixar. He's like, I want you to come back up here and talk about how you guys are going to aspire to make movies and tell stories better than anybody else.
Ellison recalled the emphasis on talent.
And what Steve basically did was he recruited the most talented artists in the world to work at Pixar.
Knowing this, the Lasseter hiring seems completely obvious from the framework of trying to recreate the magic of Jobs' early Pixar at another company. As Lasseter said in an early interview after signing on, David really wanted to build the next great animation studio. I was excited because it could be something small and nimble. I found that this was a great home for me, and we could build something pretty special, get the best talent in the world, and come together and aim to the level I've always aimed for. Indeed, many of Lasseter's techniques were reportedly implemented by the release of Luck. His willingness to make significant changes to works in progress, resulting in switching the director and overhauling the entire premise of the story. He also brought over from Pixar the emphasis on real-world research of the background of his films, and ported over the system of candid feedback about how the project was going among employees. This is not entirely unique. There is a well-documented case study of how Lasseter, along with other Pixar executives, were brought in to help Disney Animation Studios after they were acquired in 2006. A similar restructuring of Disney's creative process to facilitate more open feedback is a factor that allowed it to move past forgotten early 2000s films like Home on the Range to hits like Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen. What worked then may not work again. Luck and Spellbound were released to middling critical reviews, and some former Skydance Animation employees have said that Lasseter is too micromanaging. Win or lose, the strategy of hiring established existing talent is a mainstay of Skydance Media. Skydance's live-action movies have long banked on huge established directorial talents and even bigger stars. The promotional materials for the animated films repeatedly emphasize the credentials of their outside directors. Luck is from the creative visionary behind Toy Story and Cars. Spellbound's trailer repeats the connection through Lasseter to Toy Story, and that's director Vicky Jensen also directed Shrek. This can be interpreted both as a storytelling and marketing method, as a way of establishing continuity with the legacy of animation at a very young studio. In animation, this notably diverges from the tendency at other Western studios to elevate existing talent. At Pixar and DreamWorks, the direction of even their biggest yearly releases is often entrusted to longtime employees with minimal directorial credits who have spent years in various roles at the company. For example, Kelsey Mann, director of the $200 million Pixar production Inside Out 2 in 2024, had previously only directed a 6-minute short film paired with Monsters University back in 2013. Despite the poorly known name, it was a tremendous success, achieving positive reviews and the status of the highest grossing animated film of all time. Skydance's approach is somewhat inevitable, as it needs personnel to achieve its ambitions of yearly releases. Having diffuse personal backgrounds and experiences can be a strength, but it also seems reasonable that existing animation studios have benefited from elevating from within. Having leaders who have seen ups and downs in many different roles at one company can perpetuate a cohesive spirit for their productions. It could also lead to more dedicated employees who can expect to grow their careers, instead of just scouting for a chance to jump ship to something better. How the dynamic staffing situation at Skydance Animation implicates its long-term success remains to be seen. Another facet of David Ellison's influence is on the company's relation to tech. Technology is a foundational element of computer animation. Pixar started out as a computer business, as the capabilities to make a feature-length animated film did not even exist upon its creation in the 1980s. However, Skydance Animation is positioned deliberately with respect to the modern, massive tech industry. Beyond Steve Jobs, there's an obvious influence. David Ellison's father, Larry Ellison, is the CEO of Oracle, a database and cloud computing company that is one of the world's largest corporations. The senior Ellison is a major stockholder as part of the family's holding of Skydance Media, but is not involved otherwise. Still, it is easy to see how the influence can permeate. One of the top YouTube results for Skydance Animation is not a trailer or behind-the-scenes look, but a technical talk about the roles Oracle Cloud plays in their filmmaking. The influence of tech manifests in two pronounced ways. First, the reliance on distribution of its movies straight to streaming. There are business reasons for this approach. It guarantees a predictable return for their films. It also allows them to rely on their partner for distribution and other post-production aspects, and is the equivalent of Skydance Pictures' collaboration with Paramount. With all their films in production pledged to Netflix, there's no sign of deviation from this strategy. Second, the company is willing to lean into hot tech industry trends. The 2022 podcast previously cited was a few months off of Facebook's rebrand into Meta as part of its decisive pivot to VR. Ellison offered that Skydance's interactive division had already launched a VR game and predicted future growth that of course has not materialized.
So I think you're going to see the VR marketplace expand. Zuckerberg has very publicly talked about how many headsets he wants to get into people's homes. And I do believe that there is going to be a very significant market in terms of augmented reality and virtual reality.
Of course, he was not alone in leaning towards the metaverse. In 2023, Disney shuttered a group of 50 employees who were working on the company's metaverse strategy. But certainly through his connections to tech, Ellison is not shy about pushing the cutting edge, even if it doesn't pan out. This is notable with generative AI, which has a controversial emerging role in media production. A brief interview with the Skydance Animation senior technical director states that the company is evaluating AI tooling internally, trying to make it available as a tool while balancing IP concerns and not going overboard. The company is eager. A presentation summarizing the upcoming merger between Skydance Media and Paramount is vague, but explicitly designates AI as part of their vision for creating a world-class media and technology enterprise. So with all this, what's next? Well, we wait. Skydance Media is already a self-sustaining force, having already had several years of billion-dollar-plus revenues. The massive Paramount merger will further solidify its influence. In animation, this includes access to a number of famous IPs. I think we are still in the first stages of the impact Skydance will eventually have on the media and animation ecosystem. It is expanding day by day, putting up tremendous investment into big distribution deals and acquiring as many well-known industry veterans as it can, determined to accelerate its ability to produce films and match up with other animation studios. This video is a snapshot of what Skydance Animation looks like in 2025. That it is so influenced by David Ellison's personal preferences is fascinating because it provides a framework for understanding something very complicated, the behavior of a company, into something that is more predictable and so far empirically well proven out. I like animation, and I think analyzing this company can give clues as to where the industry as a whole is headed. I was especially motivated to collect and present this information because I think the conversation so far is lacking on what Skydance Animation is and what makes it tick. The Lasseter story is very important, one of the most important in our era intersecting animation, labor, and gender, but it's simplifying to tie everything that happens at the studio to him, or to read its films as some kind of karmic reward or punishment for his behavior. There might come a day where Skydance Animation is in the news in a big way. It could be negative attention, like the hiring of another controversial high-profile employee or the first use of generative AI in a future film. It could also be that the Skydance strategy comes together, and the studio releases a must-see, award-winning film. Whatever it may be, it would be wrong to have a limited understanding of the studio when it happens, and limited basis on which videos can be made. We saw this recently with Naza 2, which skyrocketed to the top of the all-time animation box office from a place of complete obscurity to animation fans in the West. So we wait, because if this is your first time hearing of Skydance Animation, I almost guarantee you it won't be the last.